Sounds like it may have been like an aha moment for you even.
It was very much so. Because my personality, being the extrovert, I also will limit how much I'm going to give of myself. So if there's an event going, I want to be in the middle of the event, full throttle, fully engaged, but I'm only going to give a certain amount of myself.
Hi there. Welcome back to the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast. I'm Ryan Franklin, and I would love for you to join me every week as we explore leadership topics that'll help you get the clarity needed to move your church or organization forward. You can hit the subscribe button and the bell to get notified as soon as I post a new session. And before we get started, I do want to mention that I have a great product called the Christian Leader Blueprint. It's a solid model for leadership development to help you establish a better rhythm of life, to see yourself more clearly, to leverage your strengths, and to build more productive relationships. And I want to give it to you as my free gift. You can go to ryanfranklin.org and you can download the short guide for free today. And without any further delay, let's get to our session. I'm excited to have on the podcast today a great friend of mine and one of my pastors. He's a man who is very well read and has one of the best memories of anyone that I know, and his name is Pastor Andrew Cox. Pastor Andrew, he's an associate pastor here at the POA, overseeing a ton of ministries, but one of the most impactful things that he's done for POA in recent years is he started our small group ministry, which is one of the main vehicles that we use for creating community at POA. And so today I've asked him to join us to talk about the subject of community. Let's jump in to the interview. Pastor Andrew, welcome to the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast.
Thank you, Pastor Ryan. Excited to be a part today.
So when you think of the word community, what does that mean to you personally and corporately? What does that mean to you?
Coffee.
Community coffee?
Yeah, community coffee. For those of y'all that may not, that was kind of a bad joke.
For those of you in Louisiana, community coffee.
Yeah. No, Pastor Ryan, again, thanks for having me on today. Great friend, person that's very valuable in my life, and so thank you. Community started taking shape for me in the definition probably 3 or 4 years ago. I jumped into how I study the Word has kind of switched over the last few years, but I did a small study, not a detailed, but a small study on the book of Acts. And as I began to go through that, I realized how driven they were to have community and to be community. And it happened early on in Acts 2, after the Spirit had been poured out. Mm-hmm. It says that they continuing daily in the temple and breaking bread from house to house. And when I saw that, it captured my attention because I'm an extrovert. I thrive around people.
Very much so.
I thrive around people.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I've always been mindful of the people around me to the degree that I think community deserves people to be mindful. So I jumped into that and began to realize the value that community could have for me personally, the importance of it for me personally, and then on a church level, what it could do for our church level, being part of the pastoral team here. If some things begin to grow.
If you don't mind me just backing up on, I think it's interesting that you say you were an extrovert, yet there was some parts of community that you didn't feel were maybe utilized. Maybe you didn't use your extroverted nature in a certain, to be able to build that community or whatever. But there's a difference from actually being a people person, being an extrovert, really establishing community in a biblical way. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And I think maybe that's where I begin to learn and mature on the value of community for me, making me healthier, and then my contribution, and not, I'm saying that humbly, but my contribution to the community, making a difference in the community. That's where it began to shift for me drastically on that manner, and I really felt, and it wasn't an easy process, but the Lord start, kind of massaging or manipulating who I was as a person, and there was some resistance there.
Yeah,
it wasn't easy.
So really shaping not just internally, like how the community impacted you, but also, externally, like literally your community.
Yeah. That probably started, after I jumped through that study, I started paying attention more so to everyone around me, my interaction daily, and trying to be sensitive and respond to what they were needing that day. I kind of took ownership, and I'm still trying to do that today. God allowed our paths to cross that day, so be a healthy version of Andrew, imaging Christ to them to make my community better.
Yeah. Well, tell me more about what grabbed you in the Scripture that took you down that road to kind of, it was kind of it sounds like it may have been like an aha moment for you even.
It was very much so. Because my personality, being the extrovert, I also will limit how much I'm going to give of myself. So if there's an event going, I want to be in the middle of the event, full throttle, fully engaged, but I'm only going to give a certain amount of myself. But I think where I begin to process and learn and step back and evaluate some things is there may be opportunities that I'm not giving because I'm holding some things back over for different reasons. And I think going through your assessment that we did together, and hopefully your listeners, if you have the opportunity, check that information out. That helped me a lot. Realizing some selfish tendencies that I needed to address.
And I don't know that it was all selfish even, because just thinking about your CDR and, you're very much an extrovert, a high extrovert, but you also had a relatively low social stamina.
Yeah, really quick.
And so, you've got those tendencies to,
I like to bounce.
You love crowds. You love being with people. You don't mind being in the limelight.
Right.
Yet you're going to burn out
for about 2 minutes.
Yes.
I'm a bottle rocket,
and then you got to be alone.
Right.
And go read a book or something,
which is
like
what
that.
I do.
Yeah.
Which isn't healthy all the time. And you've helped me there.
I would push back on you a little bit there and say that it is healthy sometimes.
Sometimes,
as long as it doesn't cause us to detach and not engage in community. But I think that's kind of where, the Scripture got a hold of you and was
absolutely
kind of speaking to you in that regard, saying, hey, use your extroverted nature, use the gifts that God gave you to go out there and make a difference. It's okay to withdraw and energize alone at times, but at the same time, you got a gift and you need to use it.
Right, yeah. And I think that's what leaped at me from that Acts 2 passage. It's interesting you mentioned the word gift, because that was the symbolism that came to my mind when this whole process started with me. Was, okay, I have a gift, the Spirit, not a gift of, being exciting, having fun, but a literal, God has given me His gift. Go share that with someone. Go share love.
Yeah.
That attribute of that gift. Go share kindness, that attribute, the fruit of the gift that He's given me. And when I started doing that, I could feel, words kind of difficult to come to my mind, but I could feel so complete or fulfilled. It wasn't necessarily about, the 2-minute, go touch everybody, go hug everybody, go smile at everybody, and now I have to run to my escape route. But, as I was giving, it was like, okay, the Spirit just kept replenishing, refilling, and it's been an incredible journey, probably a 3-year journey for me on community, which is kind of embarrassing because I just turned 40, so that means just for the last 3 years of my life I've been engaged or intentional about community. And God's timing. I guess.
Know you a little better than that, and I know that it's been all your life you've been focused on reaching people, and you're a soul winner for sure.
Sure.
You reach people with the gospel, but it sounds like it's even taken. It's come to another level when you started seeing these things in the Scripture, and I think that kind of. And we may circle back to personal, but
cool.
Going into corporate, it's kind of drawn your interest into small groups. And
absolutely.
We know that at POA we have chosen the group method to as a vehicle to create community in our church. That was one of the things I would hear from people quite often for many years about, this is a large church and it's hard sometimes to get connected, and yes,
very
it is. That's one of the challenges that we face. This is not a little church,
mm-hmm.
and so as a pastoral team, we spent one day, diving into a lot of various things, and one of the things that we came out of it was we have to revolutionize our small group system on the campus, and you sort of grabbed hold of that and took it from there. So kind of tell us about that.
Yeah, so, and as I remember it, and my CDR says I have a pretty good memory, but as I remember it, so you can't argue with me here, you were the person that said, Andrew, I think you would be a good person to lead our small groups.
I don't remember that.
At POA, and I resisted. I just kind of started that process of community for me.
Yeah.
And we tossed out some other names that I won't share for their sake. But I remember that vividly. And I was thinking, my God, there's no way I can do groups. I would have probably fallen in the more traditional method of the church at that time of, is there the value of groups? It just hadn't settled in me.
Yeah.
And I really think that was just God's perfect timing at that moment when it happened. It's been one of the coolest things for me. And so we started studying. I grabbed a team. I love team. And that's always been my personality there. I love team.
Yeah.
So
sure. Sports and all
that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So after talking with you and Pastor Gentry and our wives, we go to Bishop, talk with him. At the time, he was still a senior pastor.
Right.
Talk with him on it, and we decided to jump in. And I don't know that I was prepared for the amount of energy and effort that was going to involve.
Yeah.
Until we jumped in it and I started studying, reading books. That's one of my escape routes, as you know. I enjoy reading. That's how I recharge. And so I jumped in some books, started looking after people that I thought were successful in group ministry, put a team together. And one thing we battled, and we may jump into it later, so if you want to stop me and we can get into it later. But one thing I knew we were going to battle was, thankfully, our church is an extremely spiritual church. Mm-hmm. So we're motivated through prayer. We're motivated through studying the Scripture.
Yeah.
We're motivated through consecration, through sacrificing, food. Some people, fasting is what they call it, some type of consecration or or sacrifice.
Even personal evangelism.
And personal evangelism.
Yeah.
So I knew as we get ready to launch into this culturally spiritual church that we have, as we bring in this new idea or this new concept for us, not for churches, but for us.
Yeah.
I knew there was going to be a lot of pushback, and there was. So how we tried to, our team, as we began to discuss those things and work toward those, we tried to involve what was already happening in the church, the culture of our church. We want those to be part of our groups. Mm-hmm. So we have prayer as part of our groups. You have
prayer groups. You have,
right. And then even more intentionally, we ask every group when they meet to have a time of prayer. We have every group discuss a scripture. We have every group identifies some type of discipleship, the personal evangelism, and then we have fun.
But you also have small groups of people that their focus is prayer, but they also have they maybe not so much in the past, but they are integrating the community side of that into their prayer meetings as well. Right,
absolutely. And so that's been really big for us, and a big key for us is identifying what culture was already established and then try to make something new part of that culture has been a challenge. Yeah. But over the last couple of years, just that heartthrob of the Acts church, those early believers, they met in the temple. That's extremely important. In our introduction of groups, us meeting in the temple, our main auditorium, on Sundays and Wednesdays or special events, is probably more important to me now than it was before I jumped into groups. But as important is for a group of people to meet daily, house to house. And I think that started establishing itself. I enjoy studying the book of John a lot. In John 13, Jesus looks at those there, and thankfully John records it for us, but he tells them, a new commandment I give you, that you love one another, as I have loved you. And so I really jumped into that, and I really dove into that. And from that, it started, okay, can I love you as much as I love me, or as much as he loves me? Yeah. And that's a big, big concept. And when we started putting that in our group culture, our historically driven, spiritually cultural church fully jumped in on that. Yeah. They know if Jesus said it, then that's what we need to do. So they jumped in on this whole love one another concept. We just introduced it through groups, and it's been a lot of fun and very rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with that, can you tell us a little bit, just practically speaking, what POA Groups looks like? Yeah.
So I'll jump back on something that has helped me a lot on this concept even recently. Mm-hmm. So here on campus in our church, we have a ministry called Bible Quizzing, which is where students learn the Scripture, the Bible, King James Version. So it's challenging. My 8-year-old Emma Claire, our quiz coaches, our leaders of that ministry, last year in one of our group seasons, offered an introduction class to Bible quizzing. And I don't know if Emma Claire more or less wanted to sign up as a group, as a small group. Thank you. I don't know if she wanted to sign up as much as I wanted her to sign up. Yeah. But she did. She signed up, and we're in quizzing right now.
Does she have the same good memory as you have?
She has a good memory.
Because your memory is phenomenal.
She has a good memory.
I'm jealous, by the way.
I don't know that she's as competitive, but I'm starting to get a little encouraged over some recent events on that. But she does have a good memory, and it's been fun. So as an incentive for her, I told her I would learn the study with her. Mm-hmm. So the study this year is Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians. So we get into Galatians chapter 5, and Paul starts writing. We're learning what Paul has written. And Galatians 5:14, for all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So I've been engaged in this process now for 3 years personally.
Yeah.
And now it's as if God is telling me, again, it's so important to, if you want to fulfill the law, we're a very morally driven church, very spirit-led church. I try to live personally a morally correct life, try to be led by the Spirit. And Paul said, if you want to fulfill the law, love your neighbor as yourself. Yeah. So I started jumping into that.
And let me just point out,
Yep.
There's over 60 scriptures in the Bible that speak to one another.
Yeah.
Loving one another,
That's
helping
true.
one another.
Yeah.
It's a powerful concept.
Yeah, and as you study the one another, I think it starts creating all types of energy in yourself. It's really fascinated me. I can only speak to what it's done for me. Back to your question, for me, the energy that it's given me.
We crave that, even as an introvert.
Oh.
I crave the interaction with one another. I may enjoy going and being by myself for a while, but it's not long, and I'm craving to be with somebody else,
right?
To be with a person.
Yeah. I used to say this when I was in student ministry, because you would always have a student that kind of seemed to live on an island. Alone would be a good way to say it, but no one goes to an island to live. You can't live on an island.
Yeah.
The island can't sustain itself, so things have to come in from outside sources. So even if you go, even if you're an introvert, or even when you're recharging, which is what Jesus did, even himself, but you can't stay in that moment. But as you were saying, the one another's in your life are going to be the ones that give you that energy or that life.
Yeah.
So back to where for me, on the community, putting it in our church or bringing it to our church. And fortunately, our pastoral team has been a massive supporter of that, not only vocally, but involved. You've led groups.
And let me just point out, that is super important. Pastor Gentry's support of that and pushing it, we wouldn't be successful if he was not behind it.
Right.
If it was a ad hoc side ministry, that's all it's going to feel like.
Right.
And but it doesn't, at POA, it doesn't feel like that. When we're what do we call them now?
POA groups.
POA, no, the season.
Oh, we're in season 1 right now.
When we're active in a season of groups, and we've changed that name a couple times.
Yeah, to defend him. So we started this is show you how extroverted I am. We started with a quarter, then we went to a campaign, and then we went to something else, and finally our team. My personality, I'm not afraid to make a mistake. But finally our team, we've settled on season. So it's not on him for not knowing what it is. It's changed literally every time. So.
And I love the word season. But when we are in a season, it feels like all hands are on deck.
Oh, it's incredible.
It feels so good. We have so many people, so many group leaders, and so many people involved in these groups that I hear things about, the community that is being created because of that, and it brings such an excitement.
Yeah. Almost every day, Pastor Ryan, I get an email or a text message from someone that's involved in community through groups here at POA on some type of what it meant to them that day or what has happened. And it's starting now to catch on into our city community. So what I mean by that is people that don't attend our church are now being impacted by people that do attend our church, and they're hearing about these groups, they're hearing about the energy, they're hearing about the life that's coming from the one another's, and they're getting involved. We have a group right now. Just last Wednesday night, this is fresh off the press, just last Wednesday night, I was walking through before service started and was talking with some people, saw a face that was vaguely familiar, but not completely familiar, and then they had someone with them. They've started now coming to our church. They aren't members. They don't come every time we have service, but they've been coming because they got involved in a group last year in one of our seasons and loved the group, fell in love with the people. Since then, they haven't not been in a POA group, but now they're starting to attend. And it just goes back to the power of community. It's those stories that I hear nonstop.
One another. It's our craving.
One another.
It's our craving for one another.
And you're an introvert by admission. I'm an extrovert by admission. But one another is just as important for you as it is for me. 100%. If not more important for me than it is for you, because your true. Relationships, I think, are probably more intentional, more one-on-one driven. Me, I'm hopping around saying hello to everybody, so I never really get
you can hide value. You could hide behind your extroverted nature,
which is what I drift to.
Yeah.
Yep. So the one another's are so valuable to extroverts, to introverts, to all of us.
So I do want to get back to what our groups actually look like.
Sorry, I can ramble all down this stuff.
No, this is good. But I think this is a good place to even talk about, community is, I feel like that there's, and I really haven't fleshed this out in my mind right now, so I'm just thinking on the fly. But community, when I think of the word community, I think of groups of people. Mm-hmm. But there's also value in one-on-one. You and I share, and we went and had coffee Tuesday.
Yeah.
And, those are valuable moments of, and you can talk about things or consider things that you can't do in a group. I don't even know what I'm asking here, but
let me jump in there real quick, not to distract you. Tuesday was big for me, you being a one another in my life, because I've asked you a very personal question that I wouldn't have asked in a big setting. Just some advice from you, because I trust you, because we're good friends. But I would have asked you only in that setting, versus even if we'd have been in a group setting, I wouldn't have asked you in that setting, just by nature of the question. Right. That has helped me a lot just this week. So,
but
that was big for me.
The difference in, I think I'm just going to go ahead and say that we need both of those types of interactions.
100%, yes.
But sometimes, an introvert, I'm going to gravitate towards those Tuesday type interactions like you and I had. Mm-hmm. You may gravitate towards the group because you're not having to dive into those intimate conversations.
Correct.
But
which I'm not good at.
I guess my point is we need both, right? Can you talk on that?
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. And I think that's where probably 3 years ago, that's where I started realizing the value of that. I would hide behind the big group setting because I love it.
Yeah.
And I can hide in that setting really easy. But when I get a one-on-one with you, that puts me in if you want to say it, the danger zone, because I become vulnerable, which I don't like. Insecurities come out, which I don't like.
Yeah. In all of us, by the way.
And but as I do
and those that say that they don't,
they probably need to come talk to you one-on-one.
Absolutely.
But I think that the value there is so strong, and again, it's like God is just putting all this back in my mind as I'm just continue on in community. I mean, Galatians 6:2, bear you one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. So it's just, it's so important. And if you study the word burden there in 2, and then I think it's verse 5, when Paul talks about burdening in, it's 2 different types. So it's God equips you with what you need to help someone else's burden.
Yeah.
And there's just so much strength in that. And I've learned, as I'm sensitive, and I'm trying to do a better job of being led by the Spirit, but as I do that, normally there's something that I have when I become a one another to that individual in an individual setting that helps them so much.
And that's what I'm hearing you say, the big group environment was not a big deal, but you were missing that slowing down.
Oh man.
And which, by the way, you've always, I've always connected with you, and you've always been, if I told you, hey, you got a minute, I need to unpack something, you've always been there for me. But I think what you're talking about is like, you're in the grocery store and you connect with somebody and you just slow down instead of rushing out.
Right.
Slow down and really dive into this or evaluate it quickly. Is this the Lord giving me an opportunity to minister to this person?
Absolutely. And that recently happened to me in a local grocery store. Never had seen this person in my life. I don't know that they knew me. At the time, I didn't know. And for whatever reason, it's funny, I just left the gym, so I'm in gym clothes. So I'm not dressed as a pastor. I'm not even dressed nice. And there was something about me, though, that...
Whatever that means, dressing as a pastor.
So I'm not in a suit, a tie, slacks, that kind of... There's
you're,
no reason
you're
for this.
Slouching a little bit.
Right. Yeah, it looked sloppy, very sloppy. There's no reason for this person to come to me and say, would you mind praying for me? I mean, this literally happened in a grocery store. And it completely caught me off guard.
But something attracted
it.
It
was I think what has happened is I've tried to embrace so much over the last few years, John 13, Galatians 5, Galatians 6, that it's now starting to resonate without me knowing it and recognizing it, which is dangerous because if you're in a bad mood, everybody sees it if you're in a good mood. But anyway, this individual, they came to me. We had a word of prayer in that grocery store, and tears. I'm praying just a very non-obtrusive prayer,
right?
And
a grocery store prayer,
right, a grocery store prayer. And this person starts crying right there.
Wow!
And I minister to her through the Spirit of the Lord. It was just an amazing moment, elderly lady, and just an amazing moment that I'll probably never forget. Haven't seen her since, but it was very, very impactful.
I love that. So slowing down, and I think the word community I just want to bring out the word community encompasses both group type setting. It's really all relationships. It's getting in one another's lives,
right? And you have to have
in a variety of ways, and we need both types. Big group or small group, I should say. Community in a church setting, but in a small group setting, possibly if that's available to you. But then also one-on-one, not avoiding those one-on-one relationships. So
I would
yeah.
Please, 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 from an extrovert, find and have someone for a one-on-one. That's helped me so much recently. Yeah. Where I've called time out.
And for an introvert, please get in
yes,
groups.
Please.
Get in.
Jump in my group.
Force yourself to get into settings to where it's groups, because you find things there that you will not find one-on-one. So, as we sort of kind of bring this to a close and circle back to corporate style community and groups, two things I want to know is for our listeners is what is POA Groups? What does the structure of that kind of look like? Okay, and then also if you've got any tips or anything that you could give them as if somebody doesn't have small groups started, or if they just want to improve their small groups, some tips, books, or any recommendations that you would have for them to get rolling.
Okay. I think there are a lot of great resources out there for you if you'll just put the energy and the time and the investment in. There are many organizations that are doing groups. And so the structure side of it, I would encourage you to embrace what is going to work for you. So kind of talked about it earlier. Our team knew going in.
What your pastor supports, first of all.
Absolutely, yes. So if your pastoral leadership doesn't support it, I wouldn't even start it.
You're shot in the foot right off the bat.
So fortunately, our senior pastor, and then at the time, our now bishop, but at the time, our senior pastor then, both are extremely supportive of groups, for which I'm really thankful.
And supportive of the structure that you chose.
Right. And that's what I was going to tag in on there is know the culture that you have. So for us, it's spiritual.
Yeah.
So if we come in and say we're just doing fun groups, it's just going to be a niche. or it's going to be an ad hoc pushed off to the side. We came in, our team, and we knew we have to have spiritual moments in these groups, or it's not going to work just because of our DNA in our church. So in your organization, if it's on the flip side, if y'all are super fun, you may want to sprinkle in some spiritual moments if that's what you think would work for you. So we have prayer. We ask them to pray at every meeting. So, for example, last summer in our group, we did a golf group. I led a golf group. So we played golf every Sunday afternoon. Actually, every other. We did a book read, and then we played golf. Great group. But anyway, there were about 18 of us, which is too many, in my opinion. There were about 18 of us in the group. And before we teed off, we would all get in a group. One of those gentlemen would share from the scripture. We would have a time of prayer, and then we would encourage each other. And it was really cool because I like to peek sometimes and not close my eyes in prayer moments. It was really cool to see other people on the golf course pausing what they were doing and recognizing what we were doing. Wow. And even had a couple of people. You
mean people not in your group?
Not in our group, yes.
That's cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's cool.
So that was really cool. So ours is, you have to have prayer. We ask them to have prayer, have a word, a Bible, some type of discussion. It doesn't have to be a Bible study, just a quick encouragement from the scripture, and then maybe a type of a discipleship moment. Is there anything y'all are struggling with? Can we help you here? Back to that one-on-one, and that's why I said 18's too many. We've identified for us 8 to 10 is a great number in a group. Yeah, that's through reading, listening, and we've tried to add a little bit. People ask me, "Are you following this model?" And I'll say yes and no. Are you following this model? Yes and no, because we've tried to pull from many different models and tailor something that's going to work for us. So
very, very individualized to us,
right? For
sure.
And we, what I would encourage you to do that we've done, and we're actually back at the drawing board right now. We went in with a 1-year vision, a 3-year vision, and a 5-year vision, and we're really at our 3-year vision right now, and we're under 2 years in. So we're having to whiteboard it on the fly on, how do we adjust here?
Which is a good
It's a great problem. I love it. Yeah, absolutely.
It's grown that much.
Absolutely.
It's been that successful.
So where we're trying to identify right now is how do we, I think our core has bought in to the culture of groups being part of our church. We're not a church with groups. We're a church of groups. Yes. And I think they've bought into that. That's not original with me. That's another very successful church that does groups that we borrowed that verbiage from. We're not a church with groups. We're a church of groups, and I think our constituents are learning that.
Yeah, it's sort of been a process to get there because but it's catching on, and I think it's because you've got our senior pastor that's with it.
Correct.
Our bishop
is with it.
All of
Sister
us.
Sister Mangan is with it.
And even, Pastor Gentry had his own group, or has had his own group just about every time, if I'm not mistaken.
And you've led, I think all of our pastoral team has led.
Which makes a difference.
Oh, massive difference. I think where we really have an opportunity is when we allow people to realize I'm not asking you to add something to your life.
Yeah.
I'm just asking you to invite someone to be part of your life, which is back to what Jesus did in John 13. He's asking you to love as I loved you. Essentially, he said, I'm going to share my life so you can have life. Yeah. And so that's what if I can get that mindset, I'm not asking you to add one thing to your life. We're all super busy. Really, we don't have the time unless we want to eliminate something, which we battled when we were trying to figure out on a different concept. How are we going to bring groups into our super busy schedule calendar-wise on campus?
Yeah.
And fortunately, Pastor Gentry and Bishop Anthony were supportive of some decisions that we needed to make that happen.
And we had to cut a few things.
Big things.
Yeah, big things.
Really big things. But if you can understand what I'm doing every day needs to be shared with someone. So, for example, I'm a book nerd. I usually try to do a group with a book. Yeah. I know I'm going to be reading anyway, so just invite someone to be part of that group. I enjoy being outdoors, so invite someone to be part of that. You're not adding anything to your life other than people which are going to give you extreme value and allow you to fulfill the law of Christ.
Right.
So like this time I'm doing archery.
You explained that to me because I did not participate in the first, I think maybe 2 sessions. I went to a group.
Yeah, I think the first one.
But I didn't lead a group.
Yeah.
Because I told you, I said, Pastor Andrew, I just can't add anything else to my plate.
And you couldn't, in fairness to you.
But you sold me on the fact that what are you doing that you can just add people to? And so I was at the time working on the Christian Leader Blueprint, and that's what my group is. We are focused on the Christian Leader Blueprint. So it's not a lot of extra preparation or anything. I'm just inviting a group of people to my home and kind of going over what I'm already engrossed in on a regular basis.
Right. And
it wasn't a lot of extra work. I've got one tonight, and just being frank with you, I have not even looked at what we're going to cover in it because it's just going to come natural. I know what we're going to cover in it.
Yep.
Because it's just inviting those people into my world.
Yeah. And your nature, if that's something that you're not familiar with, that's going to be a big stress point for you. But because
100%.
It's something that you're doing every day.
I'm a planner. I want to plan.
But you're doing this every day, so, come be a part of what I'm doing every day. And the value that gives, it's incredible. I get so excited about it. You're going to have to rein me back in. There's so much opportunity. If you're in the initial stages, I think back to your question, if you're in the initial stages, I would suggest but make people aware you don't have to add anything new to your life unless you want to. Just invite people to be part of what you're already doing. And it's going to be so natural.
Yeah, that's very big. So anything practical like books or anything that you would highly recommend that really, even if it's an old book, it doesn't matter, what spoke to you in this process that you feel was most helpful to you?
Sure. So there were a couple different avenues I chose as we were in the early stages. I'm friends with a very successful pastor in Thibodaux, Louisiana, Josh Malasaw. I didn't get permission to say this, so Josh, if you're watching, I'm sorry.
I love Josh. Phenomenal guy.
Great guy, great friend of mine, and yours. I had a phone call conversation with him and picked his brain. They do groups in my mind. I can't remember what they call them now, but in my mind, they do groups extremely well in the environment in which they're in. Very, very successful. So I walked through some things with him, and he gave me some encouragement there. I talked to other people, so I used relationships that I had as a source. And then I attended some conferences in which there was group emphasis there. And again, read quite a few books on that. The one that I think I lean to the most for me, and I like probably the most, is Small Groups with Purpose, which if you're familiar with the word purpose, you're going to probably immediately drift to Rick Warren. It's their small groups pastor, Steve Gladen. And it was a treasure for me on many different levels on what groups can look like and what they can do. That was a great one. Activate is another good one that I've enjoyed. Other sources that I listen to podcasts on groups. Steve Gladen actually does a podcast on groups that I think is very beneficial. Andy Stanley, I read a couple of his books that they've done at North Point on groups. Church of the Highlands, they do a good job. I think they do a really good job with groups, and that is definitely a familiar group presentation here in the South with a lot of our churches. Chris Hodges, Pastor Chris Hodges, his name kept slipping me. They do a great job. So those sources, our team here was super important. Really cool stories on that.
You have a tremendous team.
An amazing team. And here's one another real quick that I think is super important, and I know it may not seem like it's an answer, but it is. You have to find someone who is infatuated with groups and they don't know it.
Yeah.
And I found that person. I was fortunate. And the sad thing is this person was looking at leaving our church. Not because they didn't enjoy the preaching, not because they didn't enjoy the music. There was no connection.
Wow.
And it's an incredible testimony. Real quick, because we have to go. I asked them to be involved in that early stage. I think it was a God moment. I really do. Because we weren't super close. Mm-hmm. Asked them to be involved. They are an incredible group leader. And they're involved in so many things now.
And they're still here.
They're still here. Their spouse now leads a group. Their group is super consistent. It's amazing. So, go to all those resources, but there's people in your organization.
That's a subject of delegation as well that we could get into, but we're not today. But empowering somebody like that, to get involved on a volunteer basis. This is not a paid employee or anything.
No, they're
so
not
on
paid.
A volunteer basis, getting the right people involved that's passionate about something can make a huge difference in whether it goes or not.
Right. And I think my way of answering that, what it was going to be, where that person, you may think that you don't have the team, or you may think you don't have the resources. I'm a firm believer that those people in your culture, in your organization, in your church are there for a reason. Just identify them, and they're sitting right there ready to go.
Yeah, that's tremendous. So we're going to wrap it up with one last question.
Okay.
And this can be related to community, but it don't have to be. Looking back at your life, what do you wish that you could tell your younger self? If you had the opportunity to tell your younger self something that would be helpful to you as a leader or whatever, what would you tell your younger self?
This is funny. This question is funny to me because also on that CDR, my regret level is really low. So it's not a regret, but that's kind of how the question comes across to me. I would probably tell my younger self to be more intentional. Younger self was very whimsical. No regard for, my dad used to tell me, you just don't think through the process. I'm like, well, I'm in the process, baby. Let's have fun.
Let's just roll with it.
So more intentional, I think, is what I would be. All my life, I've had a lot of passion. I've been infatuated with my relationship with God all my life.
Yeah.
Even early. I wish I would have been more intentional there. I wish I would have been more intentional in my education.
Yeah.
In certain areas. I have great education. I'm very thankful. Graduated from Louisiana Tech with an accounting degree, so I'm super thankful for there. But I probably, if I was going to be in pastoral ministry, I probably could have taken some pastoring classes at some point. Been more intentional about that, which I've done some studying on that. But I think for me, intentional.
And I think what we heard earlier even is intentionality with relationships, slowing down.
Absolutely.
Slowing down more with the one-on-ones and ministering to people and caring for people. And the reality of it is you leaned in more to your extroverted nature. Though we've seen the interpersonal sensitivity from you, I've seen it many times, so I'm not going to take that away from you.
Yeah.
But you've probably leaned more into your extroverted nature than you have to your interpersonal sensitivity, your compassion, your supportive nature. And really, I have seen and witnessed such a depth there with you.
Well, thank you.
And I love the intentionality that I see now.
Yeah, thank
with
you.
that.
That means a lot to me. I think that probably stemmed when I did get intentional and became really vulnerable with a couple of people in my life.
Yeah.
And then community just began to evolve, and it's been amazing.
Yeah. Well, Pastor Andrew Cox, thank you so much.
Thank you, bud.
Thank you so much for being a part of the Christian Leader Blueprint. It's been a privilege to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And if you're a new listener, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube. And also, it would really make my day if you would just take just a minute to rate the show and write a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. My name is Ryan Franklin, and thank you so much for joining us on the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast.